And yes, we are live. I'm here with my new friend Katrina. How are you doing, Katrina?
I'm doing wonderful, and I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I don't know that much about you because I go out of my way not to know too much about my guests because I want to learn on the fly. It's more exciting for me that way. So I'm going to ask
Sure.
you to tell me about yourself, walk me through the faith journey. Uh, how were you raised? When did you discover God
Right.
and religion? And were there ups and downs? Did you stray to some crazy places intellectually or philosophically,
Sure.
or spiritually, and then come back? Or was it just a very straight and narrow path? Just tell us the whole story.
Sure. Sure. Goodness. Gosh, once you've had a chance to live life for a while, it's like, what aspect of your story do you want to hear? So, specific to my faith journey, I was not raised in church. Was kind of raised by some hippie kind of, if you want
Uh,
to put them in the stereotype of that, parents, and moved constantly. I know before you went live, I mentioned I did most of my growing up in the Pacific Northwest. Um, but by the time I landed down here in the South in Arkansas, in ninth grade, it was my 13th school to attend. So moved constantly and not in church. I had some cousins that were very strong believers in the Christian faith, and whenever we would be in their neighborhood or for an extended period of time, we never spent longer than sometimes 6 months at a location, but if we happened to be in their neighborhood, they would invite me to church, bring me to church. So I had some exposure, but it certainly was not the culture in which I grew up in. And then I was 15 when I kind of entered it was a Southern Baptist church. Um, so I was kind of dating this guy who played the uh, guitar in a youth band at a church. And I went one night to a youth service, kind of basically he had invited me because he played in the band. And I showed up to that Wednesday night youth service, and that was kind of where I'd say my true faith journey began. That was, again, I was 15 years old, and then I had kind of a true conversion moment of, I guess, recognizing my need for Christ several months after that. And I've been in the church and involved ever since.
Southern, is that Southern Baptist, you said?
Yes, I am. Southern Baptist, yes. I don't necessarily place, like a stake in the ground and say,
Uh-huh.
I'm Southern Baptist
Uh-huh.
or even Baptist. I just, that happens to
You're
be
not even
this.
Southern. You're not even Southern. I'm kidding.
Right. Yeah, that just happens to be the specific denomination of the church in which I'm a member and participate in. But I view myself more along the general terms of just a Christian, a Christ follower.
You're just a hippie.
Yeah, absolutely.
How are the parents doing with their faith journey? Are they still alive?
My father passed away, it's been almost 17 years ago, so he's been gone for quite a
Oh,
while.
oh
And
wow.
and actually my parents, what brought us back to Arkansas was with my mother because my parents had divorced.
Oh,
And it was kind of a my mom, I've got 3 younger brothers, so there was 4 children. As you can imagine, the hardship that was on my mom and constantly moving with that many children. They divorced and we moved to Arkansas because that's where her family was from and where they were at. So so yes, my father has been gone for quite some time now. My mom never really, she's very much a kind of recluse type person. She's not really a people person, and well, church involves people. And she just doesn't, she lives on our property at a house that's connected to our property. And now she requires quite a bit of help and
yeah.
stuff, and she supports our faith. My husband was a pastor in Baptist churches for over
Ah,
20 years,
ah,
and he actually is now a chaplain at our local hospital. So she's always supported it, but been, actively involved in a church, no.
Oh, okay. So, you didn't marry the music guy?
Yeah, so funny story. So, um, my who would eventually become my husband, he was a youth leader
Okay.
of that youth group, and he played the bass guitar in that
Ah,
group.
oh,
Okay, so I
wow.
show up, and my husband, he was a very kind of socially awkward, stereotypical kind of nerd kind of guy. He was in college but had never really had a girlfriend, and so of course all the all
Ah,
the the other guys and the kids in the youth group were always wanting him to, you need to go on a date. We need to hook you up, and I show up as, this new girl in the church youth group, and they all were razzing him about, you need to get her number, this and that. Well, like I said, that, and I use the term dating very, very loosely. Um, with the guy that I had gone to, actually, that had invited me. Well, so who would eventually become my husband, asked the guitar player, can I get her number? And he was like, absolutely, do your thing. So,
ah,
um, and then if we were to, well, and I'll skip a lot of the details, but he never ended up contacting me, but I was a little bit intrigued by him. And he worked at a car dealership. And a couple months later, I went to that car dealership acting like I was looking at vehicles. Just knowing he was there, though. And as I was pulling out from that car dealership, I was just barely 16 at this point. So a very naive driver. I was pulling out and ended up getting hit by a bus, like
oh,
T-boned. And I was pulling out of the car lot in which he was working at. He didn't actually see the wreck, but then I remember looking over, and he's just standing on the side of the road, just staring like, did that really happen? He never came over and checked. An ambulance takes me to the hospital, all that. So later that night, he calls me to ask if I'm okay. So the joke is that it took me getting hit by a bus for him to call me. And then if we wanted to fast forward even further, that guitar player from the youth group, he actually played in our wedding. So yeah.
I can't
So
wait to hear the story about the drummer, but we'll save that for
yeah,
another day.
right, right.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding. But you're very, very attractive. So the guy is the guy. He's pretty happy because he was like a shy, nerdy guy. He's
Oh,
pretty.
you're talking about my husband?
Yeah, your husband. He
Oh,
appreciates
yeah.
it.
So we've been married 27 years now.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I don't know if he's, he's almost, annoyingly, still obsessed with me.
Okay.
I
Okay.
know what I mean? Which,
Okay.
some girls may act like they're jealous of that, but I'm like, oh no, no, it needs to stop. It
Annoying.
just stop.
Annoying. But are you just be honest? Like, were you out of his league at that time, or no?
Hmm, uh, I don't know about necessarily out of his league. So like I mentioned, he was a youth, like, intern. So
Yeah.
he was in college. I was still in high school. I was just in 10th
Wow.
grade.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
it was kind of one of those things where I don't know, like, a- anytime if anybody were to hear that particular scenario play out where the youth worker starts talking to one of the youth, I mean, it just sounds completely inappropriate, and that it would have been, like, discouraged.
Uh-huh.
But in our particular case, it wasn't.
Uh-huh.
I was very mature for my age. So yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, it worked out nicely, but I love when couples marry young. I think that's the natural way. I
Right.
think that's natural and
Yeah. Kind of
healthy and
kind of grow up together and learn how to do life together.
yeah, and plus, I was a late bloomer, so I do through years of frustration and
Right.
it's better. I think it's better if people can find their soulmate, not just another another person, but someone that they actually are meant to be with.
Sure,
And it's this very
sure.
special thing. So what about your brothers? Are your brothers Christian at all, or
Well, they are, 2 of them do kind of fairly, regularly, go to church with their families and stuff. Then my youngest brother, he kind of, uh, is kinda like my mom. He's never married, never had kids. He actually also lives on our property, kind of by himself. He's kind of
cool?
reclusive and, uh, so, uh, do they all have some level of belief? Yes. Are they
Everyone's
out
different.
there being missionaries? No.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, how, I mean, because I think your book's about legal stuff or the law or something like that.
Well, kind of, sorta. So another piece of my story is that so I mentioned my husband and I have been married, over 27 years now, and we have 5 children.
Yeah.
3 of them are adopted.
Huh?
2 of them from the foster care system. One we actually adopted as an adult, and that's, kind of a whole nother story. But all throughout our journey with foster care and adoption, I was always very transparent and vulnerable with the hard, hard aspects of bringing a child into your home from a traumatic background, uh, on like my social media and stuff, as far
Okay.
as being transparent and telling those stories, and that it isn't always this rainbow and uh, dandelion fairy tale. It's hard and it's ugly and it's messy. And I had people over the years tell me, you need to write a book. You need to write a book. You need to write a book. And I was just like, I don't have time for that. And I don't know why anybody would be interested in
Okay.
a book, anything I have to say. So I put it off. Well, then last year I was called to serve on the jury for a murder trial here in our small town.
Mm.
And it was a very difficult season in my life. I was going through a lot with a couple of our children, and the trial really took a very emotional, uh, it took its toll on me. It was very, very hard. I went into it with kind of this preconceived idea that our justice system was all about truth and justice, and that I had this responsibility to weigh all the facts and deliver a fair verdict and sentencing. And I took that responsibility very, very seriously, and had it was a 4-day trial. And when it was all said and done, a few days after the trial, another jury member went back to the courthouse and filed a juror misconduct complaint against me
Ooh.
because of something I had said during deliberations.
Oh.
Well, it was actually after deliberations were over, but that's a whole other frustrating part of it. But the defense attorney in that case ended up grabbing hold of that complaint and asked for contempt of court charges to be filed against me, to be that I be charged with contempt of court, and asked for a mistrial. Well, um, it was this huge kind of debacle,
Wow.
domino, snowball, whatever you want to call it, where everything just kind of fell apart. The original judge then ends up recusing himself of it. A new judge steps in. They do charge me with contempt of court. A mistrial is granted. And then I am faced with my own trial and legal proceedings, possibility of jail, fines,
Oh, wow.
fees, all that. And it was this 5-month period where it was hard. It was really, really hard. And I really kind of asked all those hard questions and, why? And whenever I got to the end of it, when it was all finally done, I was like, you know what? I'm going to write a book. so, so that is, and so within the book, it's a memoir, and I write it in kind of a diary format of that 5-month period of time where it starts with me getting summoned for jury duty and ends with what ends up uh, a mistrial not happening. And so that's another, you just have to read the whole story. But I took the opportunity to interweave in some of what we were going through with some of our kids.
Okay.
And then the kind of the cornerstone of the book, the foundation of it is my faith.
Okay. Okay.
And that choosing to have that faith and rise through life's trials and whatever it throws at you, just choosing that and choosing to rise. And so that was kind of the
Oh,
theme of it.
wow, that's incredible. So you didn't do any jail time?
I did not. I
That's
did
good.
not.
That's good. What was on
Yeah.
what was on the table? What were you looking at? Months, weeks, years?
Well, so, and this was another thing that was very frustrating. When I first met with my attorney, because of course, I'm like, okay, well, now I've got to get an attorney, all that. I go and meet with him. And, I had been, we all get summoned back to the courthouse whenever, saying there's been allegations of juror misconduct. We all have to come back. We all go back. It's kind of a long story, but I realize about halfway through, it's like, this has to do with me. I had no idea until about halfway through that this has to do with me. And, when it's all said and done, the case is over, and the judge gives me this piece of paper of, when I'm supposed to come back to court. And, I took that to my attorney and I asked him, I said, what does this mean? Like, what do we do at this court date? Is this where I say I'm guilty or innocent, or what is this? And he said, Katrina, he said, you've already been found guilty. This is your sentencing date. Correct. And I was like,
Wow.
how does that happen? And he said, Katrina, you're looking at a year in jail.
Wow.
And
Wow.
that's kind of that moment where like the air like vacuums out of the room and
Mhm.
you can't breathe, and it's kind of like this
Wow.
Charlie Brown cartoon where you can't understand anything else that's being said. But then then whenever I do eventually have my court date, the judge says, I can give you 30 days in jail. And of course, at that moment, I was like, now wait a minute. I've been thinking a year all this time. If it's just 30 days, can I stand up and say a few more things? Because, obviously
Uh-huh.
being
Uh-huh.
careful,
Uh-huh.
and,
Yeah.
and so the book was kind of my opportunity to finally be able to say like uh my side of the story of what
Oh,
happened, so
yeah. Wow, that's
so
incredible.
was the attorney lying to me in order to try to make me more fearful to retain
Mhm.
him,
Oh, wow.
or was he completely mistaken? I have no idea.
Wow.
It didn't really
Wow.
matter at that point.
So there's still a lot of unanswered questions, or just a few key questions that are unanswered in your mind?
I don't know. Like I said, I walked into the situation thinking, our justice system was all about truth and justice. I walked out of the whole ordeal, um, realizing there is a whole lot of manipulation and power plays. And, there were things that were done. It was like, gosh, is there actually something else going on behind, what I mean? Like behind
Ah,
the scenes between
ah,
these, like, and there are like these power plays, and I'm just a
ah.
pawn in the midst of all of it. I don't
Wow.
know.
Is
It's
it
bizarre.
are you allowed to tell us what you said that was
Oh, yeah, yeah,
controversial?
no, the case is closed, and I mean, I include, even in my book, I even have, like, some of the court transcripts and
Okay.
everything.
Okay.
So, yeah, I could, uh, it we can go down that road as far as the details of all of that, or we can go
Yeah.
kinda down the faith road.
Yeah. Well, just give me the punchline. Just give me the punchline. Like, did you say
So
something silly? Like, were you drunk and you said something stupid, or what?
No, so in the I'll give you just a little bit
Context.
of a snapshot so I
Was
don't
the
take
guy
up too
guilty
much
or
time.
innocent, first of all, in his heart
Okay,
of
so she
hearts?
was charged with first-degree murder. With first-degree murder, you have to prove intent, like you intended to kill that person. The defendant was a 60-year-old woman who had never been in trouble. She'd been a piano teacher for many decades. It was her husband that she shot and killed. Her defense was self-defense. During the trial, like I said, it was 4 days. we're all supposed to go in there with the idea of innocent until proven guilty, correct? We all understand that. I absolutely went into it with that mindset. What I didn't realize is because you are supposed to walk into it with the foundation of innocent until proven guilty, the prosecution is given more leeway than the defense because they are the ones with the burden of
Mhm.
proof, right? So, the opening statements, the state or the prosecution goes first, defense gets their chance, then prosecution is able to basically rebut everything they said and say it. So, and then they have first stab at witnesses. The state had 17 witnesses, I believe.
Wow.
Um, Exhausting to
Mm.
listen to that much testimony, none of which at all addressed the intent to kill. They were all just, she killed him, which was
Yeah.
never up for debate
Yeah.
to begin with. Then it's the defense defense's turn for witnesses. She had 14 witnesses, only 2 were allowed to speak. Every single time they'd get up, the state would object, it'd be sustained, they'd be dismissed. We as jurors were not allowed to know what they were to testify about, why it was not allowed. I didn't realize that as a juror, it's kind of come in, sit down, shut up, don't ask questions, go with group think. We think you're kind of dumb, so we're going to dumb all this down for you. That's kind of how it went. So, and I'm very analytical. I'm very much research oriented. I like to see the full picture of something. And what I realized is during a criminal trial, facts are able to be cherry picked. And not only are they cherry picked, but they can be delivered in emotionally manipulative ways. I'm sure everybody has probably watched, uh, like on TV, like courtroom drama and stuff. Like I thought that was just for TV. Sitting in a murder trial, I realized these uh, prosecutors, these attorneys must have a minor in theater because I was just like, oh my gosh, like I understand you need to keep our attention, but I'm here for facts, not for theatrics. Things like having a blown up picture of the autopsy body of the victim for us to stare at while they ranted and raved. I mean, is that necessary? No, it's just to create an emotional response. Having family members give testimony that could offer zero testimony to the things that were important, but they were allowed to sit up there and show emotions. Um, you know, to us as a jury. So I really struggled with the whole thing. And everybody knows, even if you've never served on a jury, that when you're on a jury, you're not allowed to research the case. You're not allowed to read anything in the newspaper, talk to anybody, any of that. That is drilled into you. Well, I had a significant issue with it seeming like I didn't have the full picture. And I'm all about people's stories, like who they are as a person. And I knew very little about, all I knew about the defendant is that, like I said, she's a 60-year-old piano teacher that shot and killed her husband. There's allegations he was abusive and that he was an alcoholic, but there was zero testimony allowed that would lead to that belief or prove that allegation. All I knew about the victim is that he was shot and killed by his wife, and there's these allegations that are constantly being suppressed that he was an alcoholic and abusive. And I kind of overanalyzed our instructions. And I was like, they said not to research parties of the case, and they named all the parties of the case, but they did not include that victim as a party of the case because he is not present. So I used that little bit and I was like, let me just see if I can find out something about this victim. obviously there was a part of me that knew that I shouldn't, because I only spent maybe 5 minutes, keyed his name into a database, literally found nothing. I spent like 5 minutes. I resisted the urge to go full on, CSI on him. Um, Went to bed, got up the next day. That was a day of deliberations. When it was all said and done, I will say that we ended up doing not guilty on first degree, but then guilty on second degree. When we had already voted and everything, and I'm very transparent in the book as far as how emotional I was during that time. It was very emotional, like having to utter the words guilty about another human being, and also doing so because I was like, okay, my gut and my heart want to believe this, but I am forced to make a decision based only what was presented in the courtroom during this trial, and based on that, I have to say guilty. And it was absolutely devastating for me. So I made the comment afterwards. I said, I don't know about you guys, but I really have a problem with so many of the defendant's witnesses not being allowed to speak. I feel like we should have been able to hear them and vet whether they were relevant or not. I said I wanted to learn more about him, and so I tried to look him up, but I didn't find anything. So that was the statement.
You said that in amongst the 11 of them?
Correct. Correct. And so, and the jury member that complained about me, she and I did not see eye to eye on many, many things. Um, and then when it came down to, when we had to go back to court and they brought us all in one by one to ask if there was any misconduct or anybody said anything that was not, there were only two jury members that were able to recall me ever even saying anything, which proves the point that I wasn't trying to prejudice or persuade, or it was an offhanded comment made to nobody in particular. You know what I mean? But even based on that, so you've got, most people are like, we know that I don't think there was any misconduct, but they still issued a mistrial.
Wow.
So yeah.
How much time did the 60-year-old woman get?
So so it kind of ended up, working in her favor because, like I said, we found her not guilty of first degree murder, guilty of second. And it was her attorney that was fighting for a mistrial. But the thing that was so bizarre about it was that by him fighting for a mistrial, he was actually opening the door up for her to get first degree murder all over again.
Oh.
And so I'm like, what universe have I landed in? Like, what is going on? But then, and the thing that was, like why it was so hard and for me is that, my character was called into question, my character, and, I was lied about and slandered. And like I said, we live in a small town. I am a financial advisor. I'm held in a position of trust, and my character is something, one of my most valuable assets. And to have that called in question in a very public manner was devastating. But then, so several months go by, and this mistrial date keeps getting pushed back and back and back. And then eventually the state publishes an article in the paper, again, front page. I made front page so many times. It said basically, because juror number 11 has screwed this up so royally for all of us, we don't believe the defendant could have a fair trial. And so we're going to offer her a plea deal instead.
Okay.
So they offered her and I'm like, really? Did I really screw it all up? Or was there, anyway? Okay, I'll be the scapegoat. Just continue to put all of the blame on me. So they offered her a plea deal for manslaughter.
Okay.
And she accepted it, and they, with 10 years. And she'll be up for parole in August.
Oh, yeah? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, so in your heart of hearts, you think it was self-defense manslaughter?
in my heart of hearts, do I think that do I know if in that so here's the argument, the state, the prosecution, or whatever has. Was her life in danger in that exact moment?
Ah.
I don't know.
Mm.
Um, I don't
Did
know if it
she
was or
say
not.
so?
Do
Did she
I?
say so? Did she say it
Uh,
was?
yes, yes,
Oh,
yeah,
okay. Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
I regardless of whether it was or wasn't, I believe full-heartedly that she wholeheartedly believed her life was in danger. You see what I'm saying? And I believe she believed that because of his prior history. You see what I'm saying? But that prior history was not allowed.
Right, right.
And then if you want kind of another, I guess, just a little snippet as far as you'll just have to read the book. I ended up, so when I decided to write the book, I use no names in the book, but the defendant is obviously a central character. So I felt it appropriate to reach out to her and let her know
Ah,
that I was writing a book.
ah,
Her response to me was, Yahweh has used you to preserve my life, and I will forever be thankful for him to you, no matter
ah,
what happens.
ah,
And since that time, she and I have built a friendship.
ah.
We talk regularly, and she actually now teaches one of my son's piano via
Wow.
video. So, anyway,
Wow.
crazy
Yeah.
world.
Is she Jewish or Messianic Jew or what?
Um, I would put her as kind of, I mean, absolutely. In fact, her son, who my husband and I went to dinner with just a couple nights ago, he is Messianic Jew.
Okay.
So they definitely have a lot of beliefs along that line. I think she'd probably just say she's a Christian, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just when someone says Yahweh, I think,
Correct.
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, her
yeah.
son absolutely is, though.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's my favorite name for God is I am,
Correct.
I am. The burning bush. I love that scene in the burning bush. So we'll change gears. We'll talk more about the faith, but that was fascinating. That was really fascinating. And
Yeah.
I do watch some true crime or whatever they call it because I'm
Uh-huh.
interested in the guilty conscience and the pride that denies crime, and then the sometimes the forced humility where the person is forced to repent, not to repent, but at least to confess. And then
Right.
what I'm really looking for is true contrition and repentance in these
Right.
criminals.
Yeah.
That's exciting to look for, but it's rare. It's rare where I'm satisfied where I think, yeah, this criminal has finally repented, seen the errors
Like,
of their way.
understands the impact that their choices had on others and right,
Yeah,
right.
it's rare, but that's I guess that's what makes it exciting to watch these
Yeah,
interrogations and stuff like that because you're just hoping and hoping that someone will, because it's without God it's really hard to be contrite for your
it
sins,
is.
right?
It is. It is.
So what is it about the dark side of the human nature and Satan? We'll start with the dark and we'll go to the light. I just want to know what your experience is with the dark side because you seem like a bright, well-adjusted woman. Uh, so it doesn't seem like you're tormented by demons, but what's your experience been with the dark side?
Well, I mean, my experience, so I've always um I've always been a strong advocator for the voiceless, for those without a voice. Whether that's children and I'm really, to be honest, that's really kind of what got me in the hot water with the trial is because I felt like she wasn't being given her full voice and that she was this kind of marginalized outcast, with a big M murderer on her forehead. And I wanted to know her story, but that ultimately got me in trouble. So I preface what I'm saying is that when you are in that arena of advocating for others who are outcast and marginalized, you step into that realm of poverty and addiction and hurts, habits, hangups, and you see people that are absolutely in chains. by you see the spiritual warfare being played out in people's lives and manifested in a very tangible way. And it can become a very depressing place to be when you work with those um, people in society. Of it is so hard to break those chains of darkness in their lives. They have to make that conscious, concerted effort and choice. I can't do it for them. Ultimately it's in their hands. And as a person who always wants to help and fix everything, that's
Mhm.
hard for me. I realize I can't do it.
Yeah. So, you remember when Jesus said to feed the hungry and visit the prisoner and these sorts of things? Sounds like you're naturally inclined to do that.
Right,
But
right.
you know, and I'm Catholic, so I have Pope Francis, who's very much about the marginal people on the uh, in the
Sure,
margins, and
sure.
the poor and those who are vulnerable or marginal and for different reasons. And I'm kind of marginal myself, a little bit of an oddball, and never quite fit in, a bit of a loser. But luckily, nothing, no really disastrous addictions or anything like that, which is good. But so I just naturally am drawn to the margins myself. I'm sympathetic, but
Right.
even I find it challenging. Like, if you find someone that's in need and they're really messed up, my heart goes out to them. But then you feel like you could lose yourself in that mess, and
Yeah,
there's nothing that you could possibly ever do to help them ever. It's just your
yeah,
energy going down a black hole.
yeah.
I've,
And
I've
you
experienced that.
yeah, oh yeah. And the it takes a choice to, you I have to do what I'm called to do, and I need to do what's right regardless of what the outcome is. And I think that's where that true faith steps in, is in the even if. It's the belief that God can, the understanding that he may not.
Yeah.
And to continue to make that choice, true faith is in the actions. And you absolutely can have a whole heck of a lot of uncertainty, but still have faith, because your faith is what propels you forward. And yeah, you can get, and I've been there countless times, of being pulled down into that dark hole and darkness. And there comes a point in when you have to set boundaries. You've got to
Yeah.
have boundaries, maybe with specific individuals. But uh, I think it's only allowing the Holy Spirit to work in you that you can keep yourself from becoming bitter and
Mm.
jaded. Um, and that, okay, so that
Mm.
really hurt a lot, but I'm going to go love this person over here now,
Mm.
with an understanding that the outcome may not be what would like it to be. So,
Yeah, and we can use that idea, of planting a seed, and just we don't know how the growth happens. It's not our business, that's not our it's not our
sure,
job.
sure.
So so it's very fascinating. So your husband, I'm assuming your husband's on the same page with you in terms of your faith walk and all that sort of thing.
Oh
He's
yeah, yeah. As far as uh gosh, as far as like religion, spirituality, faith, he absolutely is more solid, probably even
awesome.
than I am. I mean, he's got his doctorates in ministry. He
Oh, oh
has
yeah.
he
Uh-huh.
has a degree in the biblical languages, and
Oh,
he served on staff in churches for over 20 years. And now he's a chaplain for full time, actually, in a Catholic hospital.
oh no way.
And then he
Ah,
also is a chaplain for a hospice company here locally, and then for a company as well. So he does the chaplain side of things. So he absolutely
yeah. Wow.
yeah.
You'll you'll invite him onto my show. I'd like to meet him and talk to him if he's not too busy. If he's not too
I'm sure
busy,
I'm sure he would.
yeah.
He would delve, like, so I listened to several of your episodes. I always listen to episodes before I'm a guest on somebody's podcast, just to get an idea of how they do things. And the
I'm
few
not
that I
guilty. I'm
listened.
not guilty. If you're trying to find out if I'm guilty, I'm not guilty.
No, no, you're very guilty of being very philosophical and theologically minded. And I
Okay.
and I was listening, though, at least the episodes I landed on, I was like, oh my gosh. I am a very I consider myself a critical thinker and an intelligent person, but I am by no means a philosophical type person or a like if you want to start using those big theology words and stuff, then yes, my husband would be the one to
Uh,
speak with. But in fact, I was listening to one of your episodes on the drive home from somewhere yesterday, and I was telling my husband that I said, I was like, gosh, they were both, he and the guests were like quoting these different philosophers. I mean, I recognize the name Socrates, but and my husband says, just quote the great philosopher Shane Robertson, my husband, who says, truth is truth, whether you choose to accept it or not. So there you go.
there you go.
That's my philosophical statement
Did you
or
like
quote.
did you like the guests? Did you agree with the guests? Were you edified by the guests that you listened to?
I mean, yeah, it was interesting conversation.
Were
I
they
like
Christians?
uh one was Catholic, one was atheist,
Okay.
and one was Catholic, kind of sorta turned atheist.
Oh, really?
Um
Okay. Okay.
so I did like the fact that you were able to have, a diverse group of believers and guests on your show and have intelligent conversation without degrading or just trying to prove wrong or
Yeah.
arguing. Like I enjoy like mature conversation and discussion with people, that I don't uh, uh, agree with them, but let's have a conversation, like not to fight, but let's just like ask one another questions. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
why do you believe that? You know?
Yeah, that's exactly what I used to always say. Who are you? What do you believe? And why do you believe it? Like that's basically what I'm interested in. Like who are
Mm-hmm.
you? And it's so fundamental. But I've interviewed probably 300 guests, and like I said, it's just a part-time hobby. But every guest is different, and every guest gives you a surprise, and every guest is unique and special,
Sure,
and
sure.
has something to offer that's food for thought.
Mhm.
It's rare where a guest is just crazy and they have nothing but stupid ideas. It's
Well, and
rare.
see, and you go live, so you can't even like, I know some people, most everybody doesn't go live, and they can be like, oh, now that person was crazy. I'm not even going to publish them.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I'm kind of crazy myself, so I don't mind if someone's a bit crazy,
Right,
you know?
right.
But yeah, so where do we go from here? I'm wondering if you mentioned your husband works at a Catholic hospital. I'm wondering if you ever had an anti-Catholic bias where you thought, that we worship Mary and that we,
Right.
we're off the rails. Did you
Sure.
ever go through a phase like that, or?
I would say that I definitely stereotyped Catholics as being very ritualistic, um, not able to have a relationship with Jesus and God, not not having an understanding of why they even believe what they do, that it's all just kind of ritualistic and symbolic and the sacraments and all that. So I certainly had that stereotype. My husband working at a Catholic hospital, the, other and like the main, I guess what would be considered his boss is a priest, a Catholic priest. But one of the most godly Christian men I've
Oh,
ever
oh,
encountered and
nice.
met. And he, in fact, when all of that the court stuff fell apart, um, my husband set up a meeting for me to sit down and talk to him, and he just had a level of, like, empathy and care for me, and what I was going through, and the way he listened to me, and he said, the reason why my husband had set up the meeting with him is because I was looking for, credible people that would support
Right.
me in the courtroom.
Mm,
Okay, so here's a little bit of just me being completely honest of
mm,
manipulation on my part. I knew
mm.
that the judge that was going to be for my trial was Catholic.
Ha!
And so
Bring a
I was
priest.
like, right. So um I was like, who better to have as credible for a Catholic judge than a Catholic
Yeah.
priest to vouch for me? You know what? So that total honesty in why I sought him out. And at the end he said, Katrina, he said, I know that I do not know you well personally. I know you through your husband. My husband had worked for him for many years by that point. He said, but I absolutely want to support you. I'm going to write a letter on your behalf and I will be there for your trial. So, you know, and
Ah,
and if nothing else, I think kind of having a priest, there with his collar on, front and center in the courtroom
ah.
for my trial, brought a sense of calm and peace,
Yeah.
so
Wow.
yeah, I've since learned that, I mean, there are ritualistic people within every Christian denomination, but Catholics as a whole cannot be pigeonholed into that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is, I always say, I've said it many times on my podcast, that, belonging to the Catholic Church has its own particular dangers, and one of them is just falling back on the religious side of it, as opposed to building the relationship, having the faith. And
Hmm.
that's just a fact. I mean, that's just a fact. It's a beautiful church, and all the means of salvation are here within the church. That's what we believe, and the sacraments are real, and it's just beautiful. But if you want to be lazy, if you want to be a lazy Catholic, you could get away with it in the eyes of men. Those who aren't. Because maybe if someone's anti-Catholic, they'll see through the hypocrisy. But for the most part, you could coast. You can coast, and you can go through the motions.
Right.
And so that is a luxury that we have, which is also a danger that we have as Catholics. But I was born and raised Protestant, and
Okay.
so I've sort of been on both sides of that. And I was atheist for 25 years, so
Yeah.
that's why I'm comfortable talking with atheists, because I was there.
Yeah. Yeah. You've seen things from their perspective before.
Absolutely, yeah. But yeah, I struggle every day with my Catholic faith, because I know it's true. I believe it's true, and I appreciate it and I value it. But I'm always, because I'm lazy, I'm always tempted to just coast, and a lot of the Protestants that I meet, they don't have that problem. Unless they're the pastor of a mega church and they've just got the money flowing in, that's a different problem, right?
Sure.
That's a different
Right.
problem. That's a big problem. But
Right.
most, you know, mom and pop Protestants, you're on fire or you're not. Like, you're in or you're out,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless it's a cultural thing. And I did interview one Protestant guest who surprised me when she said she's never met an atheist. Everyone she knows is Christian. It's like, what?
Hmm.
That's weird. Like, I find that creepy, because how do you know that you
Maybe
chose
she's,
this? How do you know you
well,
chose this?
yeah. Right. Yeah. And like I said, I was not brought up in the church, but, mm, then getting, smack dab in the center of the church world,
Bible Belt,
and
is that what you're?
making friends with people within the church. There's some people that they're born into the church. They work in the church. Their kids go to Christian schools. Like, there's never any exposure to anything else, and I'm like, yeah, like, how do you, I don't know. It's kind of to me, it's kind of a dangerous bubble. I don't know.
It's like an arranged marriage, I guess, kind of thing, where it's like,
Yeah.
well,
Did you ever have any other choice? I, I mean, yeah, you do, but are you the type of person that's going to make the effort to really investigate and ask questions?
yeah, well, like I said, I mean, if you're, let's say you're part of a Catholic culture, okay, in Catholic Europe, at a certain point in time where it was flourishing, and you're just born into the family, you went to church, you did everything, and you went through the motions, but you weren't in your heart, you weren't committed. You know,
Yeah.
that's possible, and that's
Yeah.
dangerous.
Yeah. And when, going back to like, my beliefs about, Catholics and stuff before I knew very many, personally. And, another thing that so my husband and I have had the opportunity a couple of times to travel to the Holy Lands. And when you
Ah,
go to those, what's considered like the holy sites,
ah.
the Catholics, I mean, they just line up, for days to just, and it's like they are worshiping these places and these symbols of the faith. And it would just kind of make me, I don't know, like scratch, like, I don't know. I don't understand the worship of the tomb or the worship of the birthplace. Or I mean, it's neat. Like, I'm glad I got to see it, but I don't understand like kissing it. I don't
Yeah,
understand that.
yeah. Well, I've got a big crucifix here, and
Sure.
I kiss the feet, and I know it's just a chunk of metal. It's just a chunk of metal. But
Yeah.
it's a prayer. It's a prayer. I'm telling Jesus, I don't have him physically here.
But
This
it's a
is nothing. I could melt this down tomorrow. I don't think it's respectful necessarily to do that. But it's a representation, and it's just like I
right.
need to connect to my Lord, so I have this image, and there were certain schools in the past that thought that images were blasphemous or whatever, and
Right.
there was a whole
Right.
controversy, and the church decided that no, it's okay to have images in the
Yeah.
rightful place, and as long as we understand. And so yeah, I mean, I personally, I'm not maybe as willing to line up for days or whatever to see an architectural site or a archaeological site or whatever it is. Um, but I'm sure it's fulfilling for those who are so inclined.
Right.
And they're just like if you walk down a street and it's a bad neighborhood, you get a vibe. If you go into a beautiful church, there's a vibe. It's a better vibe there than
Hmm.
out in the ghetto or whatever.
Right.
And so I understand, like, if you want to go to the birthplace of our Lord, there's a vibe there. I think there's a vibe there. So,
Absolutely.
so
There
yeah,
is.
I wouldn't question that. But do some people take it too far? Probably, probably. It's the same
Yeah.
thing with the Mother of God. The Blessed Virgin Mary. I have a devotion to her, but uh, I know that people take it too far. I know that some people take it too far, and it's not
Yeah.
for me to judge. It's not for me to judge either, like
Correct.
the heart of the person. But I could certainly be creeped out. If
Correct.
and it's the same thing with the political left and right. It's like
Oh, yeah.
I'm creeped out when someone politicizes their religion, especially Christianity.
Yeah.
But it happens in Judaism and in Islam too. And there's stuff happening in the Middle East now that probably won't get too
Absolutely.
deeply into, but
Oh, yeah,
it's
that's
a
a whole
lot
nother
happening.
podcast, right?
Yeah, that's very deep and
That's kind of been going
disturbing.
on for, centuries.
A
It's
long time, a long
yeah.
time. Yeah, but when it comes to the personal relationship with our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, it's elusive because it requires humility, simplicity, and what I always say is what Jesus said. You have to be childlike. You have to be
Yeah.
pure, innocent, spontaneous, natural, and simple. It's like it's hard. It's hard for adults to um to have that, especially when there's pornography
Mm.
and war and just hatred and
Yeah. It's an ugly
it's
place for sure.
yeah. So how do you maintain a lightness about your spirit?
Gosh,
It's because you have blue eyes. That's right. It's just because you have blue eyes. That's what does it.
it's a choice. I mean, I think it's a choice. Um, I don't ever gloss over the fact that I've been handed basically, a lot of lemons in my life, if you will. And some of them, I'm like, God, you gave me this lemon, and I'm really not appreciating it right now. And I'm a very empathetic person and I'm a big feeler. I've got big emotions. And when I'm going through those hard times, I allow myself to feel all that. I allow myself to express my emotions to God and say, to allow myself to say, I'm angry and I don't understand. And I feel like you're doing this to me. So I let myself do that. But then I say, I sit in my ash pile, but then I make the choice. I say, but God, I, even though I don't understand this, and my emotions and the circumstances and everything around me is telling me one thing. I'm going to stand on the truth in what I believe, and that you are good, and I'm going to continue to trust you. And that's when I kind of, rise up out of that ash pile, wipe my face off, and keep putting one foot in front of the other. So yeah, it's absolutely, it's just a choice. I'm going to refuse. I'm going to turn those lemons into lemonade, and it's not going to be sour lemonade. I'm going to add some sugar to it with my attitude and my perspective and my belief and my faith.
Nice, yeah. That's what we have to do. I mean, it's the same thing,
Hmm.
like not to be self-obsessed, but I kind of am, especially when I'm sick. But it's kind of like I'm just praying to God, like, God, you're God. You could heal me, right? You can
Yeah,
heal me.
yeah,
Because I tried getting help from the medical system here. It's like I got to wait till the end of January to get an appointment with my own doctor,
right, right,
right?
yeah,
They said go to emergency, I'm not going to go to emergency.
right. It's like it's not an emergency.
It's not an
Yeah,
emergency. But
yeah,
so I told God, I said, look, you can heal me if you want to heal me. If you don't want to heal me, that's fine, you know.
yeah,
And like if this goes south and I die, that's good for me because like I go to be with you, hopefully, you know.
yeah, yeah,
There's no guarantee, as Catholics, we're not once saved, always saved. So like it's like I am a sinner, so like it's up to you, God, if I go or not. But so like yeah, it's like I don't want to be sick. I don't want to be sick. But I've
yeah,
been sick for like 2 weeks, and it's not a big deal. It's just a mild annoyance. But it's like,
yeah.
am I gonna get
So
better or worse? Or
yeah.
God, what's your plan? Like I don't get it.
Right, right. And it's, and I don't think God wants you to be sick, right? You know what I mean? Like, I think it's his will that we're all happy and healthy. Actually, I think it's his will that we are more like him, and sometimes, it's those hard things that make us more like
Yeah,
him. But
yeah, yeah.
but, sometimes I think we, like this morning in church, the service was all about faith, um, and the amazing things that God does in and through us through faith. And sometimes, it was an excellent message, and our pastor is kind of one of those energizer bunny guys that is just like always optimistic and positive, and that's great. I'm just not always there with him. Um, but I'm like, so are we to have faith only for what God can do for us? Is that what faith is about? Like what about all the people who have faith,
Mm.
genuine faith, that God does not come through for? Was their
Yeah,
faith any less
yeah.
than the one in which God did come through for? No, no. One of my most favorite passages of scripture is Hebrews chapter 11, which is often referred to as the hall of faith.
Okay.
Faith is sure of what we hope
Uh,
for and certain of what we do not see. And then it goes through this list of individuals that are listed by name, these great heroes of the faith, in which God did these miraculous things because of their faith, right? Shut the mouths of the lions, raised the dead to life, split the sea, all these things. But then right smack in the middle, it shifts gears and it starts talking about these multitudes of people. I don't think the word multitudes is used, but this whole vast group of people who there's too many to even name, that did not receive the promises of God. And it talks
uh,
about them being stoned, sawed in two, martyred, stoned to death, put in prison. And it says that their faith was not any less than those who received the promises. In fact, the world was not worthy of them. And do I think for a minute that those individuals didn't have their moments of lament where they cried out to God in weeping? I mean, have you read the book of Psalms? And I think even John the Baptist, who prepared the way for Jesus, um, he's sitting in prison now, and he sends message for somebody to get a message to Jesus to ask, "Are you really Jesus?" And he wants to send that message because he's like, "What in the world? Why am I sitting in prison? Are you really Jesus?" And Jesus's response was kind of like, "Give me a break, John. You know who I am, and you don't need to worry about whether you get out of prison or you stay in prison or you live or die. It Don't worry about it." And at the end of the day, John's head got served up on a platter, right? Um, and so, but sometimes I think we're scared as Christians, as believers, to admit sometimes that God doesn't seem to be coming through for me. God doesn't hear me. God must not see me, because we think that it's a poor reflection on us and our faith. I think maybe I just don't pray right. Maybe God really doesn't love me. And so I've always kind of been one of those that, I don't know, maybe it's I tell the, there's not always, there isn't always the miracle, but the faith is believing, even when there's not. And the fact that you can cling to that alone is the miracle. Your attitude and your ability to come to the other side and um, be okay if God doesn't come through for you. That's where the miracle is.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to say in my own case, not my will be done, but God's will be done, and it's like,
Correct.
but it is interesting what goes through your mind when you're going through something difficult, as you did, about the punitive side, like, because there is this sort of Christian idea of karma, like there are consequences
Sure.
when you sin. There are consequences. I'm sorry, but
Absolutely.
that's a
Absolutely.
reality. That's a reality. We can't pretend there aren't
Oh,
consequences when we
right.
sin, and I've sinned a lot. So when I get sick, I think, well, okay, I got to pay back a little bit. I got to pay back a little bit. I don't want to, but
Well, it's kind of like, I also go to the story of Job. Everybody's familiar with the story of Job, right? So he's an example where it was basically because of his faith that his entire world was shattered, right? Complete devastation and loss. And he is one that you can also look to, that he did not have joy and thanksgiving and gratitude towards God during that season. He cried out to God saying, God doesn't hear me. God has, shut me off. He's abandoned me. Um, and, but he says, though he slay me, yet I will praise him. But um, it was, so I think that, and you look at how much he whined and complained, and it's kind of like, well, goodness, no wonder his wife and his friends left him. Nobody wants to be around. It's like, well, yeah, okay, we get it. Everything sucks, but we're tired of hearing about it. But I guess what I'm getting at is that, God was okay with Job, you know, uh, questioning him, I guess. Uh, he still restored him, you know? Um, and, sometimes I think, we as Christians, we kind of just like will continually push all those emotions down. And then eventually it manifests into bitterness and ultimately unbelief, where we just become silent to God. And that's kind of the ultimate manifestation of unbelief, is refusing to speak. I think he'd rather hear our laments
yeah,
than nothing at all.
yeah,
But as far as the, like, I guess what got me on the thing of Job was, his friends were like, surely there's unconfessed sin in your life, and that's why all this is happening. And it's like, no, that wasn't it, you know. So yeah, but absolutely, yeah. A lot of times you see things people are going through, and you can like real easily point to why they're going through that. And then sometimes it's just, I mean, it's just life.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just
It's
hard.
funny, my wife is very patient with me, and she's nice. She gives me massages and everything. She's taking care of me. But,
Right.
this morning she said, "David, you're not fighting. You're not fighting. You need to will yourself better." Like, 'cause that's what she does. That's what she does. She's just like, when she gets sick, she's just like focused and just
Yeah.
powers through it.
Yeah.
And,
And that,
she sees me as someone that would just sort of pathetically linger in it. "Oh, I'm just
no,
sick
but
and I'm
that,
sick."
well, but that's the, that's just because you're a male.
Exactly.
That,
I was gonna say the same thing. That's the stereotype. The
yeah,
we
yeah.
say here in Quebec, we say "grip dumb," which means a man's cold. It's like the
Yes, a
man's
man
cold is so
cold,
much
yes.
worse than the woman's cold. Because
Yes.
we're weak and we're pathetic, us men.
Yeah,
But
well, because, everybody depends on us as women. We don't have time to get sick.
it's amazing. So I wish we could talk some more. I do have another guest coming on, but it's a real joy to
Sure.
meet you. You're so
Yeah.
beautiful and bright, and I mean, tell your husband that I want to talk to him,
Okay.
and
Okay.
tell that priest guy I want to talk to him. And
Oh,
if
yeah, Father Michael, you would absolutely love speaking with him. So if you just share the link with
yeah,
me to it, I'll share it with them and
well,
say,
you have
hey,
my email, right? So just
oh, yeah,
give them the email, and we can
okay,
set it
but
up that way.
but do send me the link on where I can, post it and stuff.
Are you
Link
talking about the link to this show here?
or the link to, yeah, wherever I can send somebody if they want to view it.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll
Yep.
send that to you right now.
Or listen to it. I guess you've got both, just the audio and then also
Yeah, like I said, I'm behind schedule on getting it distributed everywhere, and I'm starting from the beginning. So for now, it's going to be on YouTube and BitChute and Twitter and a couple other places. But
right.
yeah, I'll send you the YouTube link. That's the primary link. And
Sure.
if and then, but
I
I hope
should
you'll
have,
come
I
back
didn't
again.
know it was live. I should have, done my hair or
No, no,
something.
no. That's good. That's good. That's good. You don't want to be too hot. It was like. So, thank you so much for taking the time. I hope you come back in the new year. One last topic to cover is Podmatch. Like, I joined Podmatch, and it's like amazing because I got so many interesting guests. I had no idea that it was going to be so effective. And
Uh-huh.
had you heard about Podmatch?
Well, that's how we got
That's
connected.
how we met, right?
Yes. Uh-huh. Yep.
And has it been working out for you?
Yeah, gosh, I guess I've done about 20 or so that have,
Wow,
reached out for me to
wow.
be a
And how
guest on.
diverse is the
Oh, real diverse. I mean, for the most part, the majority of them are Christian
okay,
in nature on some particular level. A lot of them are, overcoming adversity, rising through
okay,
trials, that kind of stuff. And then I've had a few that are like uh, justice related, like and
okay, okay.
criminal
Oh, okay.
related. Is I had one really interesting and fun one I did where the host actually is an attorney, and she
Ah,
covers all of her episodes. Her podcast has to do with criminal trials and stuff, and so that was real interesting getting to speak with somebody who was able to, like, knows all the rules of evidence
ah,
and how that can all kind
ah.
of fall apart. So she had told
Sh
me she, how much, she had all kinds of guests. Normally, though, it was defendants uh, from trials that she had on her show. She had never had somebody from the perspective of a jury member.
Yeah.
So she said, I now have a different direction to take when I'm doing voir dire or jury selection. So
Oh, really?
yeah.
Ah. So she believed you. She took your side, sort of thing, with the story you told her.
Well, I took my side in she could empathize and understand the struggle and the dilemma I found myself in,
Yeah.
and the frustrations with the system in
Yeah.
general,
Yeah.
in that, you have these rules and stuff that are in place for a particular reason, and for that they're in place to assist justice and to protect individuals, but the reality is then individuals then take those rules and manipulate them and
Ah,
use them for their own
ah.
uh, personal reasons rather than for actually the advancement or protection of what they were designed for. So,
Yeah, well, that's the corruption of us in this
correct.
fallen world.
Yeah.
It's just it's inevitable. But
Yep.
there's so much more to talk with you about. So I do hope to talk to you again in the new year.
Yeah.
But we'll keep in touch for sure. And
Sounds good.
give my email address to your husband and the priest, and hopefully I'll do an episode with them each.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Sounds good.
Please pray for me and mine. Forgive me because my head's a bit thick today, but please pray for me and mine, not just for my health, but for my family and for everything. My wife is, she's anti-Catholic, so we need some prayers to bring a little bit more harmony on that front.
Of
She's
course.
culturally Greek Orthodox. I don't know if you've met any Orthodox people, but
Yeah.
if you went to the Holy Land, you probably ran into
Oh,
some.
yeah, met several, yes. On a personal level, no.
So pray for me and mine, and I'm praying for you and yours. Okay.
Well, I appreciate it. Appreciate
God
it.
bless you. Very nice to meet you.
You too. You
Take good
too.
care. Bye bye.
Bye.